I used to believe in patterns, the kind that tells you everything is just fine if the same routine happens every day. Wake up together, share coffee and light morning chatter, kiss goodbye at the door. And then, by 6:30, she'd be home again. Every evening, without fail. That was our rhythm, our pattern, until it wasn't. It started gradually, so subtly that I almost missed it. At first, it was just 10 minutes late, then 20, then 45. She'd offer excuses, traffic, meetings, late clients, things that sound normal, believable. After all, Ava was a project lead at a marketing agency, and her schedule could get hectic. I knew that. I trusted her. But what unsettled me wasn't just her lateness, it was her eyes. Distant, avoiding mine. Her smile, slightly too rehearsed, like she was performing a version of herself that she thought I wanted to see. I told myself not to overthink it. We'd been married for 5 years, and through those years, Ava had always been thoughtful, loyal, dependable. We shared the same dreams, a little cottage in the suburbs, kids running around, a dog maybe. Her ambition and drive were things I admired. It never crossed my mind to question her intentions, not until those late nights started piling up like bricks, walling off the intimacy we once had. One Thursday night, she didn't come home until nearly 10. I sat in the living room, the TV humming softly in the background. My dinner sat cold on the table, untouched. I wasn't angry, not yet, just confused. When she walked in, she looked exhausted, hair tousled, blouse slightly wrinkled, lips pressed into a forced smile. "Sorry," she murmured. "The pitch meeting ran over. You wouldn't believe how chaotic today was." I nodded. Offered her a plate I had kept warm in the oven. She declined, said she'd already grabbed something with her team. That night, as she showered, I stared at our wedding photo on the mantel. We looked so happy back then. She was laughing, her hand in mine, the future gleaming ahead of us. But looking at it, now, I felt something twist in my chest, something quiet, something I couldn't name yet. I didn't say anything, didn't accuse, didn't ask where exactly she had been. Instead, I waited. Over the next 2 weeks, the pattern continued. Each night, she returned a bit later than the one before. Her excuses varied. Sometimes it was client revisions, other times a quick drink with the team. I played along, smiled when I needed to, but deep down, a part of me was cracking. I started noticing other things too. Her perfume lingered longer than usual when she walked past me. A scent I hadn't smelled before, richer, heavier, not the light floral one she always wore. She'd changed it without mentioning it. She changed her phone password too. That one hurt more than I expected. We had always been open about everything, no secrets. If her phone buzzed, I could check it, and vice versa. Not because we didn't trust each other, but because we had nothing to hide. That transparency, gone overnight. And then there were the calls she took in the hallway. Whispers. Laughter that didn't sound like the kind she shared with me anymore. Once, I walked in unexpectedly, and she jumped, scrambled to end the call, as if she'd been caught in the middle of something. Still, I said nothing. I didn't want to be that kind of husband. Suspicious, controlling, jealous without reason. Love is supposed to come with trust. But what happens when the person you trust the most slowly begins to unravel everything you've built together? One evening, as I washed the dishes, she came in humming. Her mood was unusually bright. She grabbed a water bottle and kissed my cheek. "Going to bed early tonight," she said. "Long day tomorrow." "Big meeting?" I asked, careful to keep my tone neutral. She nodded. "Out-of-town client. I'll be heading out early. Might even be back late again. Don't wait up, okay?" I watched her walk away, her silhouette framed in the kitchen doorway. And that night, sleep didn't come easy. Something inside me stirred, not rage, not heartbreak, just a quiet, persistent whisper that wouldn't go away. The next morning, I stood in the garage as she pulled out in her silver SUV. I watched her taillights fade down the street. And that's when I saw it. Her phone. Resting in the passenger seat of my car. She had taken my car by mistake. I walked over to hers, opened the door, and there it was, her phone, sitting on the passenger seat of her car instead. My heart beat faster, not because of the phone, but because of what I saw next. The GPS screen was still on. It showed the last destination she had entered. Not a client, office, not her agency, not even a hotel. It was a small residential address in a quiet part of town I didn't recognize. I stood frozen, staring at that glowing screen. My mind raced, questions colliding, forming a storm I wasn't ready for. Why was she going there every night? Who lived there? What was she hiding? I didn't take the phone. I didn't call her. Instead, I wrote down the address, and the next night I followed her. The next day, I tried to act normal. I brewed our coffee, toasted her usual bagel, kissed her goodbye as she left for another long day. I watched her back out of the driveway, watched the same car taillights fade into the early morning mist, like they always did. Only this time, something inside me had changed. I had written down the GPS address from the night before. It wasn't even in the direction of her office. It was on the opposite side of town, near the river, nestled among old houses and narrow streets I hadn't driven through in years. I stared at that address all morning. Then again, during lunch. By evening, I had memorized it. That night, she came home later than usual, nearly 10:30. I was sitting in the dark living room, lights off, only the glow of the aquarium casting dancing shadows on the wall. I didn't speak when she walked in. She didn't notice me right away. Her steps quiet, her voice humming to herself. When she finally did, she jumped slightly. "You scared me," she laughed nervously. "Why are you sitting here in the dark?" "Just thinking," I said. She came closer, kissed my forehead, told me she was exhausted, and disappeared into the shower. Her usual routine, rehearsed to the second. But that night, I didn't sleep. I laid next to her, feeling the distance between us, even though our bodies were inches apart. I stared at the ceiling, her slow breathing beside me, and I realized something that broke me a little more. She wasn't just hiding something from me. She was gone, not physically, but emotionally. She had left this marriage already. Whatever was left between us was just a shadow of what used to be, and I wasn't sure when exactly that had happened. The next morning, I waited until she left again, then got in my car and drove. I had no idea what I expected to find. Maybe nothing. Maybe a misunderstanding. Maybe some innocent explanation that would make me feel foolish for ever doubting her. But part of me, the quiet, instinctive part that had been whispering for weeks, knew I wouldn't like what I saw. It was a modest house. White fence, well-kept garden, a blue mailbox with peeling paint, the kind of place that looked warm and lived in. I parked a few houses down and waited. Minutes passed, then half an hour, and then her car appeared. She pulled into the driveway like she'd done it 100 times before, parked, turned off the engine, sat there for a moment, checking her phone. Then she stepped out, adjusted her hair in the side mirror, and walked toward the front door. She didn't knock. She used a key. My chest tightened. I watched her disappear inside, the door closing softly, behind her like a secret being kept. I didn't get out of the car, didn't storm in, didn't scream or make a scene. I just sat there. For a long time. I watched the lights turn on in the front room, saw her silhouette move past the window. At one point, another figure appeared. A man, tall, maybe in his early 40s. They stood close, too close. He kissed her, not a greeting kiss, not the kind of kiss you give a friend or a colleague. It was the kind of kiss that said everything I needed to know. I looked away, feeling something inside me collapse, not violently, not loudly, Just a quiet implosion, like the soft crumbling of a building that had been hollow for years. I drove home, not because I was done, but because I needed to breathe. That night, I didn't confront her. She came home, told me some story about a dinner meeting that ran long, then changed into her pajamas and crawled into bed like nothing had happened. And still, I said nothing. I didn't sleep much after that. Over the next few days, I watched everything she did through a new lens. Every word, every laugh, every excuse, colored by the truth I now knew. I started noticing how often she smiled at her phone, how quickly she locked it when I walked in the room, how she suddenly became too tired for conversations, for affection for me. And yet, I stayed silent, not because I was weak, not because I didn't care, but because I needed to understand. I needed time. I needed to know whether this was a mistake, a phase, or something deeper, more deliberate. One night, as we sat in silence over dinner, she finally looked up and said, "You've been quiet lately." I met her eyes, steady. "Just tired. Work's been a lot." She nodded, looking almost relieved that I hadn't said anything more. That's when I realized something else. She wasn't just cheating. She thought she was getting away with it. She thought I didn't know, and that gave me an advantage. That gave me control. I started planning. Not revenge, not exactly, but something that would give me clarity, closure, and maybe dignity. It began with the GPS history. I checked it every day after she left. I saw the same address pop up over and over, like clockwork. She was there at least 3 nights a week, sometimes more. I began to keep track of the exact times, when she left, when she arrived, when she came back. I had a full map of her double life without her even realizing it, but that wasn't enough. I needed more. So, I started looking into the man. I drove by the house again, wrote down the license plate of the car in the driveway, did a little research. Turns out, his name was Marcus Lane, divorced, lived alone, owned a small but successful software consulting firm downtown. Nothing flashy, but clearly stable. The kind of man who probably listened well, who knew how to make a woman feel seen, and apparently, the kind of man my wife had chosen over me. That night, I stood in the shower for a long time. Let the water run over my face. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stood there, breathing in the weight of it all. The betrayal, the lies, the nights I waited for her, the moments I believed her stories. Then I made a decision. I would let her keep lying. I would let her keep pretending. Because the moment I chose to expose everything would be a moment she'd never forget. The strange thing about knowing the truth is that it doesn't always bring clarity. Sometimes it just makes the silence louder. In the days that followed, I perfected the art of pretending. I greeted her the same way, smiled at the right moments, laughed at her jokes when she bothered to tell them. We went on with our little rituals, breakfasts we barely talked through, evenings where we sat on opposite ends of the couch, and weekends filled with errands done in practiced silence. But, beneath the surface, something had shifted in me. I had stopped waiting for her to love me the way she used to. That part of me had already died. Now, I was watching, listening, preparing. Because if she thought I was going to fall apart quietly, she had no idea who I really was. One evening, she stood in front of the mirror, fixing her hair. She wore that deep burgundy blouse I used to love, the one she hadn't worn in months. She dabbed perfume behind her ears, the same new scent I still hadn't asked about. "Big night?" I asked gently. She froze for a second, eyes flicking to mine in the mirror, then smiled. "Dinner with clients, might run late again." I nodded. "Be safe." She kissed my cheek and left, and I stood there, watching the door close behind her, my heart calm and steady for the first time in weeks. I didn't follow her this time. Didn't need to. I already knew exactly where she was going and for how long she'd be there. Instead, I sat down with my laptop and started pulling together documents, bank statements, insurance policies, shared assets, things we never talked about because we thought we had all the time in the world. It felt strange, this quiet war I was waging, not with violence, not even with anger, but with knowledge and control. The next day, I visited a lawyer. I didn't say much, just laid out the facts as calmly as I could. I told him I wasn't ready to confront her yet. I just wanted to know what my options were. He looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. "You're handling this with more grace than most," he said. I didn't feel graceful. I just felt tired. That night she came home a little earlier than usual. She brought takeout, her favorite Thai place, the one we hadn't ordered from in months. "I thought it'd be nice," she said, setting the bags on the counter. "We haven't had dinner together properly in a while." I watched her, trying to decode the sudden gesture. Guilt? Fear? Or worse, an attempt to pacify me before another lie. Still, I played along. We sat, ate in silence, sipped wine under the dim kitchen lights. She asked about my day for the first time in what felt like forever. I told her it was fine. Then she looked at me and said, "You've been distant lately. Is everything okay?" There it was, the question she had to know the answer to already. But she asked it anyway, and I stared at her for a moment longer than I should have, long enough to let her feel the weight of everything I wasn't saying. "I've just been thinking a lot," I said. "About us." Her eyes flickered. "What do you mean?" I shrugged. "I guess I just miss the way things used to be." She looked down at her plate, pushing around the rice with her fork. "Me too," she said quietly. But it didn't sound convincing. It sounded like something you say when you know you've already left, but don't want to deal with the mess just yet. The next morning she left early again, said she had a strategy meeting downtown. I waited an hour, then drove to Marcus Lane's house. This time, I parked directly across the street, and I waited. 20 minutes later, her car pulled in. She wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. She got out, smiled at him when he opened the door, and they embraced, right there in front of the world, like they had nothing to lose. And maybe they didn't, but I did. I had my dignity, my peace, my story. I started taking photos, not to blackmail her, not even to use in court, but for me. Proof that I hadn't imagined it all, that the woman I loved had left me long before I ever suspected, that I hadn't failed her. She had simply made a different choice. I went home and stared at those photos for hours, and that's when something shifted again. Not sadness, not pain, resolve. I wasn't going to keep living in the shadows of someone else's lie. I wasn't going to be the backup plan, the fallback, the husband she returned to when the fantasy ran out. I was going to end it, but not with yelling, not with accusations, with clarity. I started planning something else. A dinner, a small one, just the two of us. I made reservations at her favorite restaurant, the one by the lake, where we celebrated our 3rd anniversary. I didn't tell her what. It was 4, just asked her to keep the evening open, said I wanted to reconnect. She agreed. Maybe too quickly. Maybe she thought it was working, that I was still blind, still desperate for her attention. But what she didn't know was that this dinner would be our last. Not just the last romantic dinner, the last anything. Because when she walked into that restaurant, I was going to show her something, and she'd never forget it. I spent the entire week preparing for that dinner, not with grand gestures or rehearsed speeches, just details. I wanted it to feel like any other night. Comfortable, familiar, almost nostalgic. I picked the table by the window, her favorite, ordered her favorite wine ahead of time, made sure the lighting would be soft, the atmosphere warm. I even wore the navy blazer she once said made me look too handsome for a married man. It was a strange thing, getting dressed that night, like I was putting on armor. Not to protect myself from battle, but to walk through it with dignity. She arrived 15 minutes late, typical, but this time I didn't mind. I needed those extra minutes to breathe, to remind myself why I was doing this, not out of spite, but for clarity, for closure. When she walked in, she looked radiant. Lipstick a shade deeper than usual. Earrings I hadn't seen before. A dress that clung just right. She smiled when she saw me, that same charming smile she once used to melt me. "You look good," she said, leaning in to kiss my cheek. I smiled back. "So do you." She sat across from me, unfolded her napkin with ease, and sipped the wine the waiter brought over. "This place always brings back memories," she said, looking around. "Remember our 3rd anniversary here?" "I do," I said. "You wore a red dress that night," she laughed. "You always remember the small things." "Some things are hard to forget," I replied. We talked like old times, surface-level stuff, work, weather, her latest campaign. But beneath it all, there was a current, one she didn't notice, but I felt it with every word. She thought this was a reconciliation dinner. She thought I was trying to win her back, and that illusion was exactly what I needed her to believe. Halfway through the meal, she leaned in and asked, "So, what made you want to do this? This dinner, I mean." I looked at her for a moment, then reached into my coat pocket and placed a small envelope on the table. Her smile faltered, just slightly. "What's this?" she asked, fingers already reaching for it. "Just something I thought you should see." She opened it. Inside were 3 printed photographs, the ones I had taken outside Marcus's house. The smile dropped completely. She stared at them for a long time, didn't speak, didn't blink. Then, quietly, she placed them back in the envelope and slid it aside. "You've been following me?" "No," I said softly. "I only followed you once. The GPS did most of the work." She closed her eyes, took a deep breath. "Ava," I said, my voice low and steady. "I know everything." Silence settled between us like dust in a forgotten room. "I wasn't planning to tell you this way," I continued. "I thought maybe I'd wait until I had more. But then I realized I don't need more. What I already know is enough." She looked up, and for the first time in weeks she didn't look confident. She looked small, like a child caught in a lie. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "Then why did you keep going back?" She blinked rapidly. Her lips trembled. "It was just supposed to be a distraction. I never meant to hurt you. But you did." "I know," she whispered. "And the worst part," I said, leaning forward, "is not that you cheated. It's that you kept looking me in the eyes and lying, every single night." Tears welled in her eyes. She didn't try to hide them. "Why didn't you say anything earlier?" she asked. "Why did you let it go on?" "Because I wanted to see how far you'd go. I wanted to see if you'd eventually come to me and tell the truth." She looked away, ashamed. "But you didn't," I said. "I didn't know how," she replied. "You had a key to his house, Ava." She flinched. I sat back in my chair, exhaling slowly. "Do you even realize what that meant? That you had created a second life, one I wasn't part of." "I didn't love him," she blurted out, suddenly panicked. "I swear, it wasn't about that." I didn't react, because I had rehearsed this moment too many times to be pulled into an emotional whirlpool now. "You don't have to love him," I said. "The betrayal wasn't just in your heart, it was in your actions." "I can stop. I will," she pleaded. "I'll cut it off. We can fix this." I looked at her, really looked at her, and I saw a woman who was scrambling to hold on to something only because it was slipping. Not because she truly wanted it, but because she was afraid of losing control. "I don't think I want to fix this," I said gently. She stared at me in disbelief. "What?" "I think we've both known, deep down, that we've been broken for a long time. This What you did? It just brought the truth into the light. Her hands shook slightly. So, this is it? No, not yet. There's more to say, but I thought you deserved to see what I saw, to know that I'm not blind. She nodded slowly, then said, "What now?" I stood up, straightened my jacket. "You'll hear from my attorney. We'll do this clean. No drama. No revenge. Just honesty. Something we haven't had in a while." And with that, I walked out. Left her sitting at that table by the window. Alone. Exactly how she had made me feel. Night after night. The silence after that dinner wasn't immediate. It grew slowly. She didn't call me that night, didn't text, and neither did I. There was nothing left to say in that moment. The message had been delivered, not with shouting or anger, but with something far more powerful, certainty. The next morning, she came home early. I was already up, sipping coffee in the kitchen, staring out the window at a world that suddenly looked more honest than it had in weeks. She stood at the doorway, hesitant. Her eyes were swollen, red-rimmed. She hadn't slept. "I didn't know you'd be up," she said softly. I didn't look at her. I usually am. She moved closer, stopped at the edge of the kitchen tile like there was a line she didn't know how to cross anymore. "I didn't go to his house last night," she said. I nodded. "Didn't think you would." "I stayed in a hotel. I didn't know where else to go." I finally turned to her. "You could have gone anywhere, Ava. But you don't need to explain. You made your choices." She flinched, just a little. I hated that I still noticed. "I want to talk," she said. Shook my head gently. "I've done enough talking for both of us. Now, I'm listening." She opened her mouth, closed it, then walked to the table and sat down like it used to be her place. Like she still belonged. And maybe part of her wanted to. "I messed up," she began. "It started with just curiosity, a message, a coffee. Then it snowballed. I didn't plan it. I didn't even realize how far I had gone until it was too late." I watched her quietly. "Marcus made me feel important," she continued. "Like I wasn't invisible." "Invisible?" I echoed, more to myself than her. She winced. "I'm not blaming you. I think I got lost somewhere. Between the job, the pressure, the routines. I didn't feel seen anymore." I let her words sit in the air. Painful as they were, I understood them, but that didn't make them okay. Then, "Why didn't you talk to me?" I asked. "Why didn't you say you were drowning?" She looked down. "Because I was ashamed, and because, deep down, I didn't want to be stopped." There it was. The truth. Not just the affair, but the intention behind it. She didn't trip and fall into another man's arms. She walked there, consciously, willingly, and now she was here, hoping I'd catch her on the way back. "I'm not proud of any of it," she whispered. "You shouldn't be," I replied. There was a pause. "Then," she said, "so what happens now?" I stood and walked over to the drawer by the fridge, pulled out a manila envelope and placed it on the table in front of her. "What's this?" "Papers. Preliminary drafts. My lawyer prepared them." Her fingers trembled as she picked it up. She didn't open it right away, just stared at it, like holding it made everything suddenly too real. "A trial separation?" she asked, scanning the label. "Yes," I replied. "It's not a divorce. Not yet. But it gives us space. Gives me time to breathe." She looked up at me, eyes pleading. "Are you sure this is what you want?" "No," I said quietly. "I never wanted any of this." She swallowed hard, lips pressed into a thin line. "But maybe we could—" "No," I cut her off gently. "Not now. Maybe not ever. I'll sign it," she said after a long pause. "But can I stay? Just for a few more days. I'll sleep in the guest room." I hesitated, then nodded. She needed to feel what she had broken, to live in it, to see it every day in the quiet spaces where love used to exist. But I wasn't done yet. There was one more thing I needed her to feel. Not humiliation, but the cost of what she had done. A few days later, I invited 2 friends over, Mark and Danielle. They'd been with us since the early days, long before Ava met Marcus. They knew something was off, but hadn't asked until now. That night, while she was in the guest room, I told them everything. Not with bitterness, just truth. They were quiet, for a while. Then Danielle said, "We always thought you two were the perfect couple." "So did I." I smiled sadly. Ava walked out halfway through, hearing the last part of our conversation. She froze in the hallway, eyes darting between us. She wasn't prepared for this, for the shame, the reality. She had kept her secret in the dark. Now it lived in the light. "I'll go," she said stiffly. "No," I replied. "You asked to stay. You're still welcome. But understand, this is what accountability looks like." She didn't speak, just turned around and walked back to the guest room, quietly closing the door behind her. It wasn't revenge, it was truth. And truth, when spoken calmly, hits deeper than any scream. She didn't come out of the guest room much after that night. I think she understood that something fundamental had changed, that the space between us wasn't just physical anymore. It was emotional, permanent. A wound that no amount of time or apology could really mend. I was polite, cordial even. We still exchanged a few words in the mornings. She still poured herself coffee from the same pot I brewed. But our lives had started to flow like parallel rivers, close, but never touching again. And then, one Saturday morning, she asked if we could talk. I nodded. We sat at opposite ends of the couch, where we used to cuddle on Sunday movie nights, where we whispered about our future, where I once believed love was a guarantee, not a gamble. "I've been thinking," she said, her voice slow, like each word was weighed before spoken. "Maybe we shouldn't do the trial separation. Maybe we should just file." I didn't answer right away. She kept going. "Dragging this out might hurt more than help. And if you've already moved on emotionally, maybe it's better to be honest about it." I looked at her then, for a long time, and finally said, "I already filed." Her face didn't move. For a second, then blinked. "What?" "I filed last Thursday. My attorney already submitted everything." Her jaw clenched, just barely. "You told me it was just separation," she said, her voice cracking. "I lied," I said calmly. She looked stunned, like the air had been pulled from the room. "I'm sorry," I added. "But I needed to know if you would fight for us, or if you'd give up the moment it got hard. And I think we both know the answer." She shook her head slowly. "You manipulated me." "No," I said. "I gave you space. You filled it with silence." She stared at the floor, hands folded tightly in her lap, and then I dropped the real twist. I also sent the photos to Marcus's ex-wife. Her head snapped up. "What?" "She deserved to know. About you. About him. About the little fantasy you two were living while she was still fighting to keep their family intact." Her face went pale. "You had no right," she whispered. I shrugged. "Neither did you." She stood up, shaking now, not from rage, but from something deeper. Humiliation. "You told me this wasn't about revenge." "It's not," I said. "It's about truth. Full truth. No more shadows." She took a step back like the room itself had become too small. "You've ruined everything." "No, Ava. You ruined everything. I just stopped pretending it could be fixed." She covered her mouth with her hand, her eyes glistening. "He's going to hate me." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. She already knew. That perfect little bubble of secrecy she'd built. It had burst. And now, she had to live in the consequences. "I thought you'd want to keep this quiet," she whispered. "Protect your image." I stood slowly and walked toward her. I did. For weeks I protected your image. I lied for you, smiled for you, carried the weight of your betrayal so no one else would have to. But then I realized, why? Why protect someone who wouldn't even tell the truth when I gave her the chance? Tears finally fell. Quiet, restrained tears. Not dramatic sobs. Not pleading, just defeat. I never meant to hurt you, she said again. But you did, I replied. And there it was. The final nail. The final truth. She broke. Just a little. Not with screams, not with a collapse. Just a soft sound, the kind that escapes when you know you've lost everything. I walked away. Back to the kitchen. Let her stand there, wrapped in the echo of everything she destroyed. Later that day, she packed. No dramatic exit, no grand goodbye. Just silence and the soft zip of luggage being closed. She left me a note. 4 lines. I'm sorry. I was weak. I loved you once. I hope someday you'll forget me. I folded the note and tucked it into the back of a drawer, not to keep her close, but to remind myself of the lesson. Trust, once shattered, doesn't just heal, it transforms. And sometimes, it turns into something unrecognizable. But I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even broken. I was free. The house felt different after she left. Quieter, of course, but not empty. Just still. There were no more half-hearted excuses echoing down the hallway. No more faint perfume clinging to pillows that weren't meant for me. No more wondering when the door would open, or if it would. I started waking up before the alarm. Not because I had somewhere urgent to be, but because peace has a way of rousing you gently. I made coffee for one, and it didn't feel lonely. Just honest. I folded the laundry myself, cooked small dinners, played soft jazz, while reading by the window. And in all of that silence, I didn't find sadness. I found myself. There's something strange about grief when the person you're mourning is still alive. She didn't die. She just disappeared from the version of my life where she was supposed to stay. And while that might sound cruel, it's not. It's just the truth. A truth I had to grow into. I began taking walks in the evening, something I hadn't done in years. I'd pass the same houses she and I used to comment on. That one's cute, she'd say. Too many gnomes, I'd reply. We had our little routines, even in judgment. Now, I walk those streets alone. But I didn't hear her voice anymore, just my own thoughts. Calmer now. Settled. One afternoon, I ran into Marcus. It was accidental, or maybe poetic. He was standing outside a cafe holding a coffee he probably didn't deserve. Our eyes met. He recognized me instantly, though he tried to pretend he hadn't. I didn't look away, didn't flinch. I walked right up to him. He shifted, uncomfortable. You sent those photos, he said flatly. I did. He nodded, staring at the foam of his latte, like it held answers. She ended things with me too. I figured she might. There was a long silence. Then he said, I didn't know she was still living with you. She wasn't living, I replied. Just existing, with both of us, he exhaled. You didn't deserve that. No, I said. But I got through it. And with that, I walked away. I didn't need revenge. Didn't need to see him miserable. I had already won the only battle that mattered, choosing not to lose myself in someone else's betrayal. Weeks passed, then a month. Her name stopped coming up in conversation. Her toothbrush disappeared from the holder, her clothes from the closet, her voice from my memory. I never heard from her again, not after that note. No long apologies, no last-ditch effort to fix things, and maybe that's how it was supposed to end. Quietly. One day, I received a small envelope in the mail. No return, address, just my name in her handwriting. Inside was a single Polaroid photo, us from years ago, standing outside a cabin during winter, bundled in coats, cheeks red from the cold, smiling like people who didn't know how stories end. On the back, she had written, "I meant it once. I'm sorry I lost it. Thank you for not becoming like me." I stared at it for a while, then slid it into a drawer. Some things are meant to stay in the past, frozen in time, untouched by the bitterness that follows. I sold the house 2 months later, moved to a smaller place near the coast, close enough to the water to hear the waves at night. I planted a small garden, read more books, even adopted a dog, Charlie, a golden retriever with too much energy and not enough awareness of furniture. Life became simple, and in that simplicity, I found peace. I didn't rush into anything new. No rebound relationships, no loud declarations about being better off. I wasn't interested in proving anything to the world. My healing didn't need an audience. I just lived, and maybe that's the real victory. Not in getting even, but in getting free. Because the truth is, betrayal doesn't break you, it reveals you. And what I saw in myself after she left wasn't weakness. It was strength. The strength to walk away quietly, to forgive without forgetting, to love myself enough not to stay small for someone else's comfort. People often ask what closure feels like. It doesn't always come with answers. Sometimes, it's just a moment, a morning where the coffee tastes better, the silence feels kinder, and you realize you're okay, truly okay. So if you're ever in a place like I was, confused, heartbroken, unsure if the truth is worth knowing, let me tell you this. It is. Because knowing the truth, no matter how painful, will always be better than living in a lie. And sometimes all it takes is a GPS screen blinking in the dark,